A plus Eagles draft. I'm sorry, Chucks. I got you. Swerve ball.
Oh, good. Oh, good. Go ahead.
4 for 4. We got Les rocking with us from the get-go, from the inception of the show. Do you rate the Eagles draft an A plus? You agree or disagree? We're going to talk about it. Let's get into it. Eagles talk.
You love the Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! You love the Philadelphia Eagles, let me get a hell yeah! Philadelphia!
So I kind of stole Chuck's thunder there a little bit, but it's all right.
All good. All good.
He won't
You got a better voice than I do, so it's all fine. It's all good.
Hey, listen, also, tidbit.
Much.
This is Chuck's last show for a couple weeks. My man is going on vacation. I don't even know where he's going, but
Where do you think I'm going?
Okay, never mind. I know where he's going. It's a 2-week
Jamaica.
No,
somewhere in Orlando with the mouse that has some ears and some Star Wars and some stuff. But enough of that. Listen, man, it's another Monday night. It's a hot one. May is right around the corner, so pollen is out, allergies are up, spirits are up. Especially if you're an Eagles fan. If you're a Sixers fan, spirits may be down. But this ain't the show for all that. This is not why you're here. You're not even here to hear me talk. You're here to hear yourself. Over there, cat corner across from me, diagonally down. So we're going to get his thoughts. But there was a little thing that they called a draft, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday last week. And dare I say, I think the Eagles hit it out the park. But do I agree to our poll question tonight? Which our poll question tonight, if we could put it up, Chuckster, the Eagles addressed all their needs with the 2024 draft class. Agree or disagree? So I'm going to go down to the man in the mellow yellow right below me because he has a yellow shirt. I have yellow in my shirt. PY, what say you? A yellow shirt that says bananas on it? Come on now.
Yes.
No hanging fruit. Enough of the campy stuff. PY, did we agree to the poll?
1,000,000,000%. Like, I don't understand how you leave this draft and you don't feel so much more confident than you did like 3 weeks ago. Like, you got your stud corner, you got your CB1, you got your Swiss Army knife and Cooper DeJean. You have a developmental pass rusher, which many are viewing as a blue chipper, especially with your Daniel Jeremiah and Howie Roseman. Like, you got your wide receivers that you can develop over the next few years, especially if the guys that they brought, Paris Campbell and Devontae Parker, don't pan out. You got your offensive linemen, and if you're a linebacker freak, you got your linebacker and son of a former Eagle. Like, what about this draft could you not have enjoyed? Also, they got an offensive lineman who looks like a serial killer. Like, so he's just going to be throwing dudes all over the place.
This is the point of the show where I always have to throw in the views of one Peter Young did not reflect the same as of A2D Radio as a whole or entity.
You know what? You're just so mean to me.
Or those of this show.
Or those of the personalities on this show, sans the banana shirt. So I'm gonna go to Les next. Yeah, Les. So we're here for a reason. So we might as well. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, if the question was, did they have a really good draft? I would say, oh yeah, they had a good draft. But the way you worded it addressed all of their needs. I mean, let's be real. I mean, I understand what Peter's saying, but you got a linebacker. You got a linebacker in the 5th round. You didn't get an offensive tackle at all. You signed Mekhi Becton today. He's always hurt. That's okay. He's going to be a swing tackle. That's a good Band-Aid for this year. And I know all you guys have really gotten together and ponied up the $80 to subscribe to PHLY, where I'm writing now. But I wrote about this today, in case you didn't. The draft is about choices. And because they spent 15 years not drafting good corners, they had to, and it was a miracle that they were able to do it, and kudos to them for doing it, but they had to spend, 22 and 40 and trade up to 40 giving up a pick, to get 2 corners. And that meant no successor for Lane Johnson, and what might have been a good year to get a successor to Lane Johnson. You just would have had to go up in the first round to like 14 or 15 or 16 to get a guy like that. And they couldn't do it because they had to get corners. And I'm not saying they shouldn't have done that, but I'm just saying, no, they didn't get everything that they could have. I mean, you don't. I mean, there's never a draft where you get everything you need. The running back, I have no idea. They're trying to blaze a new frontier. I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, but so they've got a white corner and a white running back. It's interesting. They did the edge rusher is, I certainly respect all these draftnik guys who are like, oh boy, this guy, but he played at Houston Christian. And before that, he was a safety for 3 years at Cornell. I'll have to see.
He's smart.
I mean, it's a great story if he's a wonderful player, but I've seen this movie before. It's Davion Taylor and Curtis Marsh, and he's a project, and I don't pick projects in the 3rd round if it's me, but obviously I'm not a GM and I'm not smart enough to be a GM. Right. But I can't say they did. I can't say I agreed with everything they did or they did everything wonderfully. I do think the getting the 2 corners was an amazing. I mean, even if DeJean ends up as a safety, he's still a kind of a vital cog, I think, for several years in your secondary. So getting 2 guys like that at this point, I mean, it was a Hail Mary, but you did it. So, I do have to give them great respect for that, but I'm not sure that they addressed. I know they didn't address all their needs in this draft.
I agree. So here's this. I agree with Les in the fact that I disagree to this poll solely for the same reasons that Les said as well, because when I read this question and I'm thinking to myself, okay, the draft as a whole, that 72-hour period, right? And like Les said, you can't go into a store and one-stop shop for everything, right? That's not how I don't know, outside of going to the grocery store, unless your bank account is like that, I don't know anybody that can really do that at this point in stage, right? Not in my circle of my acquaintances in my life. So I immediately thought about, okay, so if they really addressed all their needs in the draft class, why they signed Mekhi Becton to a $5.5 million deal, right? And maybe we've been hearing a lot of this talking about, hey, like when he looked at the board and he looked at what was there, the tackle pool and the offensive line depth really just wasn't there in this class at that point. But like Les said, maybe it may have been more beneficial to get a Lane Johnson replacement. But guess what? Even while we've been preaching BPA, we didn't have the luxury of BPA in some sorts to go get a lineman because of the fact of we have not hit on corners in the past. Yes, is it a blessing in disguise, the fact that they could go get Quinyon Mitchell, who fell to them at 22, who most people thought, like myself on Thursday when we were live, that they were going to have to trade up to 16, 17, 18 to get him? No, and he's a top 10 player. And then you heard it. Everybody watched the Philadelphia Eagles social media channel by now, where they see the Cooper DeJean pick. They were trying to get back into the back end of the first round to get Cooper DeJean. Let's not take that out of account as well. So I'm happy they were able to give a 50, 53, and they got picks later on. But if they would have got 50, 53, 78, and just got 40 in that other pick and didn't make all those other 75 trades that we saw on Saturday, and that was it, will we still be saying the same thing? Now, I personally think, I know I'm not contradicting Les or going against Les here. I think Jalix Hunt may be the diamond in the rough for this whole class.
He might be. I don't know. He might very well be.
It's flip a coin, right? It's flip a coin. But I like getting Johnny Wilson in the 6th. I like Dylan Keegan. I think the Michigan lineman that they drafted as well. That's all there. But at the same time, it's like, let's not forget what led us to this point, because very, very rarely, and Les can speak to this a little bit more, out of the years he's covered the Eagles, when have we ever been able to kind of quasi say like, hey, we did BPA, and it also somehow miraculously also filled the box of a need that we had.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like to have the board shake out like that to where your biggest need was secondary, but also happened to be arguably the best players on the board at that time. Haley's Comet. That's Haley's Comet. That doesn't happen. So it's almost like it's a fallacy to think that maybe like, is this too good to be true almost? Right? Is this too good? Like, it's so good. Is it going to pan out? We won't know for 3 to 5 years. That's generally how long it takes for a draft class to pan out, right? 3 to 5 years. But on the surface, I'm not saying the Mekhi Becton thing, what is there, they only signed him because they didn't draft the tackle. I'm not saying that at all.
Oh, I'm saying that. That's exactly what. If they had drafted a tackle in the first 3 or 4 rounds, they would not have signed Mekhi Becton. I'll bet you $500. I mean, they wouldn't have. That's why it happened today rather than last week.
Right. And also, it doesn't count towards a compensatory pick formula too, right?
Right.
Yep. Because they waited until after 4 o'clock today to do it.
Yeah. And this brings up an interesting point, and I don't want to be unfair to them at all. The 3 picks he got for next year, that's a big deal because they didn't have – I don't have the list in front of me. They had very few picks next year.
They only had 6.
Get compensatory. Yeah, they weren't going to get compensatory picks this time.
Right.
So getting a 3rd, a 4th, and a 5th for next year, that'll there'll be 5 years from now, one of those guys is going to be a good player for the Eagles, and we're all going to, it'll be a little bit forgotten that they had to do this in the 2024 draft in order to get the guy. But and I should have mentioned that. That is something great that they did. It really, and it was very necessary. And that's the best. That's one of Howie's real huge strengths is being able to shuffle all that around and come up with an extra pick here and an extra pick there.
Forward thinking.
It's like watching a 3-card money guy on the corner in New York City. He's like,
no, that makes perfect sense. And before I pass it off to Chuckster here, want to get to the Jeremiah Trotter Jr. I'm glad it happened. Right? It's a great story. It's a great heritage. It's how often can you say that a legacy in the Philadelphia Eagles sense of the same position, same name, same number, that can happen, right? Within a time frame where that player, the father, was still is still around and still somewhat relevant, obviously not on the field, but within the community. Like, we're not talking like Jeremiah Trotter Sr. is X amount of years old. Like, he's still with it. Like, he still has it. He still has his wits about him. So to see that, it's a great story. I want the kid to pan out. But I always say this when you said it's a combination of choices, right? It's a combination of choices to where however many 140 plus picks chose not to go that direction. And do you think they were doing that out of the benefit of the story? Do you think that the other 31 teams in the league were to say, you know what? It's a good story if he goes to the Eagles, right? Nah, that ain't it. There's a reason, and hopefully he outproves that reason, and hopefully it works. But it's a great story for what we have right now, right? So, and I'm happy he's going to wear the same number. Does it solve all our issues? If you ask me right now, leading into this poll question again, do I feel better about my linebacker room now than I did our show last week? A smidge?
Yeah, smidge. Yeah.
A smidge? A smidge? That makes you feel any better? A smidge? I mean, Peyton Wilson was there. It's funny how players that have questionable traits go to organizations. Peyton Wilson to the Steelers. I mean, if anybody was going to take a chance on this kid, it would be him. Yeah. Junior Colson to the Chargers. Like, that's one of the ones where I'm like, at 69, like maybe that, because I didn't follow him a lot. And then when I saw Chuck start talking about, I start watching this tape. I'm like, this dude's a perfect fit.
Yeah, that's a good player. I would have loved to have seen. And they didn't really. The only way they would have had a chance is if they didn't do the Cooper DeJean thing, and they were picking at 50 and 53, and they could have taken him at 53. But after that, well, we haven't let Chuckster talk here yet. I'm the one blabbing.
Pete likes to ramble until he saves me.
What? Never.
Not you. Don't Pete.
I understand who you were talking to.
I am with Les and with Pete. I'm gonna disagree to the poll, and it's not again. I lead it for the same thing, the same way that Les led it. It's not because they didn't have a great job. I gave them an A. I'm gonna give them an A overall for this class. It's just you can't. You guys touched on it already, so I don't need to harp into it. But you can't. It's very rare you address all your needs. And PY, I know you rattled off all the positions, but you got to look at like where you drafted those guys. Like those offensive linemen, they're late round picks. They'll be lucky if they're a Jack Driscoll. You know what I mean? And one of the things like one of the reasons, and I know you disagreed with me going into the draft, but one of the reasons why I was okay if they ended up with an offensive lineman in the first round or second round is because we need a backup. We need someone who's going to be a backup and / heir to Lane Johnson down the line, possibly. And we could use an upgrade at right guard, maybe. So you could see an avenue where that is a need, and that wasn't addressed. Hence, Mekhi Becton goes and signs. So like you have that linebacker. I love Trotter Jr. It's a great story, like you said, but that doesn't fill a need. Like you guys say, like you had to be like Junior Colson or like after Colson, I was looking at Cedric Gray. Like those would have filled a need, but they weren't able. Now, am I mad about it? Not really, because I understand that they went up to get Cooper DeJean, a guy that they thought they'd have to go, take in the first round. So I totally understand that, and that makes their whole draft class phenomenal. Howie did a great job of maneuvering around the draft board, getting picks for next year, doing all of that. So it's an awesome draft class, but it's very rare for a team. I mean, like I can't remember, but like maybe the Ravens one of those years were like a team that practically hit all their needs, but they're also a team that usually drafts very well because they let the board come to them. So I mean, it's not rare. So it's just because we disagree doesn't mean we didn't love their draft class. So it really was. And Pete, what you alluded to with Trotter Jr. 100%. And you know what I mean? Like it's great story. There's a reason why he was there in the 5th round. Did he fall a little bit? I think so. Yeah. I personally had like a late 3rd, early 4th round grade on him. I think the measurables, the athleticism, it gets a little over criticized sometimes, but I think that he's a very smart, intelligent, instinctual player. And I think that he can definitely be another version, kind of like a TJ Edwards. That's like, I can see that. Now, is it possible he doesn't? Yeah, it's very possible. But I think that getting him in the 5th was a really good pick, and obviously a great story. So I loved it, but I hope Eagles fans don't make it out to be something that it's not. And I think that for the most part, I want to give the fan base credit as a whole. I think that Ben Solak from The Ringer was talking about it, and Shio Kapadia, they were saying that like as a whole, I think the fan base knows what and who he is, and if he becomes like a great special teamer who makes like significant plays on special teams and then fills in every once in a while on defense and makes some splash plays here and there, I think that would be a win. I think overall the fans would be like, that's great. You know what I mean? That's wonderful. So I loved it. And I think it capped off essentially a great draft by the Eagles and Howie Roseman. So
I wanted to jump in on the Trotter thing real quickly. I don't want to dominate the conversation, but the problem is his dad weighed 260 plus. They listed him at 260.
That's a thick man.
And it was such a different era in the NFL. He was a downhill linebacker, a blitzing linebacker, a guy that saw a lot of running backs, coming at him. It wasn't the game that you have now where people were throwing over the middle as much, and coverage was so important. And his son is like 25 pounds lighter. He's not, even if the game were still like that, he doesn't have his dad's body, and he is an instinctive player and a smart player and a good player. And I think 5th round, you're absolutely right, Chuck. I think he's going to be a good special teams player and be a role player in the defense, which in the 5th round is kind of you can't quibble with that. But no, he's not going to be an iconic player. I mean, it would be nice. I hope he proves me wrong, but I just don't think that's going to happen. He was, I think, 155th overall, and
I think you're right.
Yeah,
So.
His dad was third round out of Stephen F. Austin.
Yeah.
And he actually would have been first or second round if he didn't have a horrible knee already coming out of college. I mean, his dad was a stud. Everybody in the draft, even back then, knew this guy could play. He wasn't drafted to be a special teams guy.
Yeah.
So it's just a very different. If they had Brian Dawkins Jr., he couldn't be Brian Dawkins because Brian Dawkins would get thrown out of the league now. You can't do that. And I just, there is a small segment of the fan base that's kind of waiting to see the 80s or the 90s come back, and it's not, it won't.
It's not happening.
Yeah.
And so like a comment like this from JD Koch. He says, so just go by where is that logical? It is from the standpoint of what we're saying is he doesn't fit an immediate need just based on where he was drafted. That's not saying, and I know this is not what you were implying, Jay. That's not saying he ultimately can't supersede that. Right. We're not saying he can't have an impact like his dad had an impact, but that impact is just going to be different on the game because the style of play is different. The one thing that we've heard it a couple of times, Chuck's mentioned it and Les mentioned it, the special teams aspect. Special teams is going to have such a bigger emphasis and bigger part to play in the game next season with the kickoff. That's another trait from Cooper DeJean.
Cooper DeJean, yes, beat me to it,
Cooper DeJean,
also the guy from Texas A&M.
And Nia Smith, the punt return aspect of it, that's going to be big, and I think it's going to play a bigger part into the field position game, right? One interesting tidbit that I heard regarding the Jalen Hurts pick is when Daniel Jeremiah had his big board up, Howie supposedly contacted DJ via text or via phone and said, I need you to take the big board down because other teams didn't know he was still available. So I don't know how true that is. The kid is raw. We get that. But like Les said, we've seen it with Davion Taylor. We've seen it even with some picks be even higher, more stock. Marcus
I just don't like third round project. I like projects, but third round, Roman Wilson.
So
been a nice guy.
I keep hearing people say this, and I'm like, oh, he's Davion Taylor. And I said, I don't think he is because, I don't think anyone and their mother would have thought that Davion Taylor was going in the third round. I think everyone was shocked when they did that. They're like,
okay, that's a good point.
When they drafted this kid, if you even watch the draft, you're like, who's available? His name is up there. It may have been a shock to some people, but to people like Daniel Jeremiah and other draft experts, they weren't shocked that they picked him. If they picked him in the second or first, they'd be like, what are we doing? That's probably an overdraft. But where they got him, I think it's where a lot of experts expected him to go.
The only thing I'll say about that, and you're absolutely right, and those are good points. A lot of this buzz about the guy is from Senior Bowl week.
Yes.
And I've been to a bunch of Senior Bowl weeks. And it is important because you're doing these drills against some of the best players. You don't get all the best. You don't get the underclassmen usually. But you get some good players that you're practicing against. But it's practice.
Mm-hmm.
As Allen Iverson once said, it's not the game. He played at Houston Christian and at Cornell, and Cornell, he was just a guy playing safety, and I know he grew a lot and all that stuff, but we'll just see. I mean, it's a great story, and I hope they did it right, and I know all the draft people are all excited about this guy, but I like guys that played the position that they're going to play for a long time in college and did well. And, but sure. I mean, he's got all these incredible measurables now. He's fast. He's decent size. And we'll see. But I keep thinking about, I've got too many of these guys in my head, You were talking about the big receiver, Johnny Wilson, and I'm seeing Ifeanyi Moma.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes. First thing that came to mind is
that's wrong. I mean, but I can't help it, you know. And this guy, you know, Marcus Smith had wonderful measurables, but he had no idea how to be a defensive end. They had Trey Thomas out on the practice field trying to teach him. Well, a lot of defensive ends do this, and then they do that.
Yeah.
Like
I hear
another one.
You know.
Yeah. And I think he's one of those, and I'm sure there are a ton of players like prospects every year, but he's one of those where it's in the eye of the beholder. It depends. Like there are some that had him lower, there are some that had him higher, and unless you know this, like every team's board is so different because their scouts are different, the scheme is different, so not everyone's board is going to be the same. So where you have a Jalix Hunt that plays kind of like that hybrid stand-up role on the edge, that's not going to be this. He's not going to be high up on the board of a team that plays a base 4-3. You know what I mean? Because he's got to put his hand in the dirt, and so it's one of those, like, you can understand it. Like I personally had him in the 4th round too, because prospects like that. You're right, Les. I lean toward you, whereas the first 3 rounds, I want something more solidified. Whereas the 4th round, day 3, that's where you can start to take more risks on guys that need time, and Jalix needs time. So I had the 4th round grade on him, but like if it's the late 3rd and if Fangio sees if Fangio sees that like he can use them, then I might not love it, but I can understand it. You know what I mean?
This might be a Fangio pick. You know, we haven't seen Vic Fangio yet, which is another rant I could go off on about the way the NFL is today. They haven't even introduced him, but he's here. And maybe, when you have a new coordinator and it's somebody with a resume like Vic Fangio, and he says he wants a guy in the 3rd round, maybe, it's best to do that if that is what happened. You want to get off on the right foot with Vic Fangio, and if this is what he needs, then sure, okay.
Right.
Yep. Yeah, let's get to some of the chat, and then we'll get to some other thoughts from Les. So Angry Bear still says, linebackers are my concern. So yeah, you don't take a linebacker until 5th. They are understandably going to be a concern. Greg Milakovic, who was with us on for the live reaction show, did a great job. Love having Greg on because it's another guy to bounce off. He watches so much college. So Greg, he chimes in and says, fellas, disagree to the poll. While great draft, I think ignoring defensive tackle or taking a project edge doesn't necessarily fill needs. So yeah, and that's understandable. Let's see, what else did I? Oh, Marcus Smith says, "What's up, fellas? I disagree."
Marcus Smith.
Yeah, I know, right? Disagree with the poll. Definitely address secondary. The linebacker is still concerned, even with the Trotter pick.
Yeah.
But
I tell you, the offensive tackle thing is a big concern to me. Just from this standpoint, we haven't had this happen in a while, but it happens once every several years. Mailata or Lane, God forbid, goes down week 4 for the year. Do they have a good offensive line then?
Yep.
Mekhi Becton.
There's a reason why he was cut. I mean, the talent is there, but he wasn't able to stay healthy. He's just, he a lot to do.
Yeah.
So
I think he played between 2021 and 2022. I think he played 1 game.
Yeah.
Out of a possible.
And the Eagles have had such a luxury of depth the last several years. They've done a wonderful job with that. But all those guys are gone now. Suo Peta and Jack Driscoll, and even Andre Dillard, the last couple years he was here, was a usable plug-in tackle. You could get a game or 2 out of Andre Dillard. Then he went to Tennessee and was just horrendous. But, they haven't been in a position where they really couldn't withstand an injury, even a short-term injury, without really being shaky looking. And now they're kind of in that situation to me.
Yep. One more comment here, and then we'll do.
Who's this Thomas Arnone fellow?
Thomas Arnone, April plus draft. Yeah,
he's hiding somewhere. He don't like Monday night. He allergic to us now.
I wanted to get to hear this comment. He says, "I wanted Edgerrin Cooper over Cooper DeJean." So I saw
wrong
this.
Cooper.
I know, wrong Cooper. I saw this. There were a couple people online that I saw have this similar take, and let me say this, and you guys can chime in too, unless you want to chime in too. I think we need to keep in mind always, and every draft year, I pound this table, like, you cannot reach for need. I understand that linebacker was a huge need, and you can argue it still kind of is. Mm-hmm. And I understand that a lot of people, they see the name Edgerrin Cooper, and he's a flashy prospect, and they overinflate his talent. Right. And you know, they say, "Oh, he's a first round guy. Go get him in the first round," just because linebackers need. He is not. If you're grading prospects out, and you're looking at an evaluation standpoint, Edgerrin Cooper just is not the level of prospect that Cooper DeJean is. He's just not.
Without question.
Cooper DeJean, I'm not, and I know everyone has their different opinions, but I did not come across an evaluator, a scout that didn't have Cooper DeJean in the first round, and I didn't have one that had Edgerrin Cooper or earlier than a second round grade. It just
I didn't see a single mock where I saw Cooper in the first round.
Yeah, so you can't. The fact that and if you want to make the argument that you would have rather stayed in the second round instead of trade up, I can understand that, but at the same time, getting up to just get a guy like Cooper DeJean, who is a shock that he was there, I can't fault them for doing that, because at the end of the day, if you're drafting talented players and great prospects who have that type of potential, that's a difference maker. It's a difference maker. So you guys can
give me the blue chip player over the need any day of the week. I don't care what it is. Like, if I can get a first round pick in the second round, like, I'm taking him. Like, I think we all would have liked an Edgerrin Cooper or a Colson, you know what I mean? But like, when you have a chance to go and get that type of player, you go up and get him. Like, picks be damned. Like, who cares? Like, you're telling me we left this draft with two of the best defensive players available, and you only had to give up a second round pick.
Yeah, in the secondary, which has been a disaster area for a while now, and is really, if you wanted to pick one thing last season that I would call ground zero of what happened, that would be my place right there, the defensive secondary. I mean, sure, there's a lot of other places that you could also talk about, but that's where I would start right there. And it wouldn't
got torched by Drew Lock of all people.
Yeah.
Yep.
Real quick, we talk about blue chip players, right? So I just want to get this out real quick. Yo, our fan base, it's been a grind over the weekend. I think recently, like with the last 24 hours, we
10:01.
We hit 10K on 10K subscribers on YouTube. I'm pretty sure we got the followings around, but I mean, we do this for a reason. We do it for our outlet. We do it to be able to live our childhood dreams, as PY did before we came on. Really, less. He never thought he would be in this position, but hey, the platform is here. But it wouldn't be a platform if we didn't have you guys tuning in every week, week in and week out, every show. So we definitely want to take this moment to say thank you, and we appreciate it. And this is only the beginning. So if you're in here now, you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Feed the algo, share it with your family, your friends, and those who are similar mind, even if they don't like the Birds, but they just want to hear good sports talk, because that way our videos get pushed to the top and you get to hear more of our voices. But I want to pose this to y'all real quick, and even to the fam right out there in the chat. You tell me how many linebackers, true stud linebackers, that are starting in the league right now that you can remember where they were drafted at on draft night.
Mm-hmm.
Very few.
Yeah.
So this is not.
My point is, almost none of them are first round picks.
That's my point.
Nobody takes a linebacker in the first round,
right? And that's my point, where it's like, I get it, right? Like, we're sitting here saying that most of the things that we've seen so far were those who don't agree to the poll, where we talk about they need it if they address every need with the class. We talked about the O-line, right? Me and Les were talking about the O-line. Chuck's even talked about the O-line to a standpoint. But most of the fam in the chat is talking about the linebacker position. And I'm just like,
That's our
You
fan
have to
base.
take a look at the linebacker position as a league looks at it and the league evaluates it.
Take
Like you
one
can
the
name
first
starters,
round.
right? Like you can name starters across the league, but you probably don't remember they were drafted in the second, day 1, day 2, day 3.
Right.
No, he wasn't.
The evaluation has to be when you make that pick. You hope it pans out. Yeah, Martian, that's a big one. He should have never left Philly. He should have never, because he was homegrown. Never left Philly. But it is what it is.
He wasn't a perfect player. You know, there was a reason why he wasn't drafted. He wasn't real fast, but he really worked hard and made himself a good player. Yeah. And you keep guys like that. To me, unless he just got but I honestly think he wanted to go home to Chicago for some reason.
Yeah.
I mean, the team's horrible.
You don't get signed 10 seconds into free agency if you're, you know what I mean? It just happened
weird.
because that's what he wanted to happen.
Wanting to go home, but if your team, it's all about, you have to play the games. You're not going to just be, hanging out with your buddies. You got to actually play games, and the Bears were horrible. And maybe they had a good draft. Some people say they do, but it's still a ways. By the time they're really good, TJ Edwards might not be around to see it. But yeah, I would have loved to have kept TJ Edwards, and that was you're right. He didn't say it, but he just he was never staying. He wanted to go home. I misread that. Okay, he wanted to go home, and that's just a shame because they haven't had many guys like that. And that's kind of what I was looking for in this draft. I mean, maybe they got an undrafted guy who's going to be wonderful, but they have drafted linebackers who were useful, like Michael Kendricks and Jordan Hicks. But they don't keep them around. They
don't love them. It's just
Hicks I could understand because he was never healthy.
So and yet, once he left here,
he was fine.
I don't know why.
So, I just think it's funny because they bring up linebacker all the time. It's the thing I care about the least, even though I do think it's important. Because Eagle fans will tell you, "Oh, you gotta draft one in the first round." Really? Because the Ravens drafted Patrick McQueen and they were ready to trade him before the offseason. Like I understand the need for a linebacker. I really do. But the best of linebacking core in the NFL was a 3rd and 5th round pick.
Yeah.
No, Marcus, it would have been an amazing pick. But you know what's an even better pick? Cooper DeJean, the Swiss Army knife, the Mayo Magic.
Yeah. Well, I fought this battle as a beat writer for many years, and a lot of it was people that they want to see a 240-pound running back, and they want to see Trot or Bill Berge, and they want to see, the game like it used to be. They want to see Buddy, and they want to see blitzing every down. And, I mean, it just God love them, but it's no.
The organization just doesn't believe in it. It's not even just Howie Roseman. They haven't.
It's not the organization so much as it is the league doesn't really, There are teams that believe in it more than the Eagles, but nobody drafts them in the first round. It just doesn't happen ever. Like you said, 3rd and 5th for the 49ers,
Yep.
I mean, look
if you talk to people
on the market this year, 3 years, $41 million. You know what I mean? It's like he would be a top. What other position group outside of running back, if you're a top 5 player in that position group, you see in a contract like that?
Yeah, no.
I
think linebacker and running back are probably the most devalued positions at the moment in the league.
Linebacker
the difference between a great running back and a pretty good running back is on the field. I mean, in terms of winning and losing. Yeah.
I mean, it's a lot of other comments. We got one. Where was it at?
You can point it out. I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure which one you're looking at.
Where was it?
And those in the chat, if you have any more questions for Les before he heads out in a few minutes, put them in now. But yeah. So Don did ask, what's y'all thoughts on Will Shipley and Johnny Wilson? I guess I'll answer the Will Shipley thing because for obvious reasons. If you looked at my scouting report on Shipley and all the other running backs in this draft on Twitter, also the report cards are on A2D's posts. So Will Shipley, I didn't mind the pick. there were guys I wanted more over him. Shipley is like kind of put it this way, like he's like a jack of all trades, master of none. He does a lot of things pretty well, and he's a good athlete, very good vision, versatile. So he's good in the passing game as a receiver.
He might have a special teams.
That too. Yeah. He's the concerns with him are one, the pass blocking needs work, which isn't surprising for college running backs. He's not going to break a lot of tackles. He's not powerful or strong or has good contact balance. So like you wrap him up.
You're not selling him here, Chucks.
I'm just giving you my.
He's being honest.
I spoke about the positives. Now I'm going to speak about the negatives. But the biggest concern is the fumbling. Along with Marshawn Lloyd, the fumbling was a concern. So he's got to tighten that up. But I mean, and I wrote in my my transition summary, like it's hard to find a team in today's league that wouldn't find Will Shipley useful because of his versatility. Pass catching back will have a role. So the ceiling might not be high, but he's a solid player. Like he's a solid player, and he will provide competition for Kenneth Gainwell. He will. Maybe not off the bat because he's got to get the pass protection stuff up, but down the line he will provide legitimate competition for Kenny Gainwell for RB2. So that's Will Shipley. I'll let you guys handle what you thought about Johnny Wilson, because I know Les, you mentioned him, you saw him, and you thought of Ifani.
MoMA, yes.
MoMA, yeah, and we've seen these big wide receivers before, so I don't know what you guys think.
Ifeani, it was interesting. That was 2013 and 2014. He was with the Eagles in training camp, and fans loved to talk about his potential and so forth. And eventually, he went to a bunch of other teams, and eventually ended up in Arizona and became a tight end. They put some weight on him, made him a tight end, and it looked like he was going to actually. He played 1 year and caught 3 passes. And then he got hurt and never played again. And he's in the marketing. I looked this up. He's in sports marketing, and he's getting a law degree now. So there you go. But
okay.
Johnny Wilson, I don't know. He's a big wide receiver. Apparently, he dropped a lot of passes, I guess, is what I heard.
Yeah, doesn't have the best hands.
That's an interesting body type. And who am I to say he can't play? They obviously think there's something there. I don't think their current setup, I was really surprised that the wide receivers coach didn't get fired at the end of the year. I don't think they have a great reputation right now for developing wide receivers, but we'll see. We'll see how that goes.
Immediately with the Johnny Wilson pick, I thought to myself, are they going to try to convert this dude to tight end?
And then they said they wouldn't.
They say that now.
I don't see him as a tight end guy, guys. He did, for one, most of his stuff was on the outside. Like he did most of his damage on the outside.
Yeah.
He's not thick enough to be tight end. Like he's not to be a tight end, you have to have some muscle. Even if you're a movement F tight end who plays outside a lot of time, you have to have bulk to you. And he doesn't have that. Like he's 6, like you can look at his weight, but he's 6'6", so that muscle density is not there. And plus, he moves. You have that baseline movement on the outside where he can just be a wide receiver. So I know people assume that they see size and they're like, oh, tight end. No, like
there is more to it. He has to be able to get through the middle of the field,
right? Get through all the
guys, hitting him and stuff like that. Yeah,
exactly.
So Les, we got some rapid fire questions specifically for you. So first one. This is the first one. Les, did you see the other teams?
Did I see the other teams? Yeah, I did. And I had an interesting text conversation with one of my sons, the younger son, who's really into this stuff, and he was decrying the fact that Washington got Jaden Daniels and the Giants got the wide receiver Neighbors. And I was like, it's the draft. I mean, you can't have them all. The other teams, especially if they're really bad, you can't keep them from getting chances to draft good players. There's always the heartwarming chance that they'll screw them up. Like the Commanders did RG3. But I mean that. I don't think anybody had a draft that now you're like, oh my God, how are the Eagles going to compete with this? In fact, Dallas,
especially Dallas.
Dallas is like, we got Ezekiel Elliott back. Dallas is the team I worry about because they were the most talented team in the division. They won the division last year, and they should have won a couple playoff games, but they're Dallas, so they didn't. It's a little, in the long run, it's a little concerning that there's not an idiot in charge of Washington anymore, and
it's not
the
fair.
Giants have a real coach, but
do they?
You can't do anything about it. I mean, that's just, you can't have an easy division every year, and you just have to, make your team better. There's nothing you can, I guess I don't think anybody had a terrible draft in the division, but there's nothing you can do about it.
Do you think, this is the next one, this is the best draft year by Howie so long?
There's just no way to know that right now. I mean, the year he traded for AJ and then drafted good players, that was a hell of a 2018 when he traded out of the first round, and he only had 5 picks, but all 5 picks are good NFL players. If you look at that, Matt Pryor's probably the worst, and he's an NFL player, and they got him 5th, 6th round, something like that. I just can't say that right now. It has promise, and he once again, as he did with Jalen Hurts, a lot of GMs would have been fired over the Wentz, but Wentz being drafted where he was, giving him a second contract when they did, and having him just blow up. That would have ended careers a lot of places. But Howie had Jalen Hurts,
Jalen Reagor.
And so this year, this cornerback thing, they were in a desperate situation. They really were. And he pulled it out of his hat again. And so it could be his best draft, but I'm not going to say that now.
It's so funny you brought up that name. Les, thoughts on the Wentz trade conversation.
I hadn't even thought
biggest
about
season
that.
ever. Because essentially the Cooper DeJean pick was the last resource from that trade that helped them get up to 40. Is that what it? I can't say it's
big. I mean, there's a lot of big fleecings. The Herschel Walker trade with Minnesota.
Ricky Williams.
There's some great fleecings. It's right up there. To me at the time, I thought he was going to go to Indianapolis and be good. I
think we all.
I was an idiot. But I've never seen anything quite like that saga. But I don't want to talk about it all night because I probably could. But
what my 30 for 30 on that one?
That was a big fleecing. You're right, and it was a big that really bailed Howie out of jail. It really did. I mean, he was in when they had to make that trade, when they were forced to trade Carson Wentz around. I really thought Howie's ship was sinking, and it wasn't.
Yeah. So a couple others are kind of all centered around the same topic overall. What if you could face value, if you are grading, if you are the teacher, what letter grade overall are you giving the Eagles 2024 draft?
Boy, I hate doing that. But right now I give them an A. A minus, just because I don't give them an A plus because they did have needs that they weren't able to address, But the fact that they got those 2 guys up high like that is just you can't.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is ridiculous. That alone makes it an A minus type draft.
I think it's the craziest.
It doesn't work out. Even whatever happens below that.
I think it's insane that in back-to-back years you walk away with Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith. Obviously, Nolan Smith still has to pan out. Mitchell and Cooper DeJean. That's that is very, very true. But I was just thinking about. I said
regardless of how the rest of the draft pans out, it reminds me of, and I wasn't covering the Eagles then, but the Donovan McNabb draft, they get a lot of credit for getting the only quarterback in that group, that huge group of quarterbacks, just like this year, who turned out to be good. But if you ever looked at the rest of the Eagles draft that year, it was awful.
Oh,
it was terrible. Barry Gardner in the second round, and on from there. It was just a terrible draft, which was why it was so hard for McNabb to ever win anything.
Yep.
Oh, God, dear. The draft. What are you going to do?
Yep. Love it and hate it.
Les PHLY is where they can find you. As always, new column up today, as you stated. $80 for the year. Is that the subscription?
It is. And I hope they're going to do something a little monthly or, give it a little better, have some stories for free or something. I don't know. But right now, that's the deal. And who am I to, they're paying me, so that's just fine with me. If they're watching.
There you go.
They could be in here. You never know. You never know. So, well, Les, as always, we thank you for joining us on a Monday night. A little later than normal. We started a half an hour late this week. And we're looking forward to having you again next Monday and upcoming weeks. And we'll have something to talk about. That's the one thing about this city. This team always gives us something to talk about, whether you love one, whether you hate them, but you got to respect them. So, Les, anything else you want to plug before you take off for the evening?
That's about it for me. I'm just really happy you guys let me do this, and I'm good to see you, good to talk to you, and I hope you get you past 10K subscribers and keep on going toward 100.
Appreciate it, Les.
Thanks, Les.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Les. Have a great night.
Have a great night.
All right, so it's just the three amigos. Baggio's Bread, Mount Laurel, home of the best stuffed bread, tomato pie sandwiches, cutlass meatballs. Mention A2D Radio for 10% off your in-store purchase. That is the main title sponsor for Eagles A2D Talk on Monday night. This question here was posed.
Oh, sorry. My bad.
Quick draw McGraw, you. SJM86 says Johnny Wilson will make the practice squad. That's cool. It's the everything else in this comment that I'm very curious about. Have 114 viewers right now, only 8 likes, 8 hearts. If we can, it's just a click of the finger or a touch of a screen. If you feel the movement in your heart, just go get a dab on one good time. But Anais Smith is very underrated, second all-time leader receiver in AM history, only to future Hall of Famer Mike Evans. Refined route runner, good hands, speed, and special. So I agree with everything in that statement. I see no lies. I think the one thing I will say with Johnny Wilson and Anais Smith, they both bring something to the table that wasn't already in that room.
Yep.
Johnny Wilson with his size, Anais Smith with his intricacy and his route running and his ability.
Special teams ability.
Think there's something there that we are more well-rounded in that room. But with that being said, I mean, we have to see because there's only one ball. I literally when when Bananas was on the show earlier and he said Devontae Parker and Paris Campbell, I forgot they was even on the team.
So did everyone else.
I forgot they was here.
Probably Howie.
Yeah. So, but I mean, definitely for sure. I don't know what your thoughts are on Anais Smith. I wanted to ask you this question though, Chucks, to kind of carry us out. So we heard we heard your rundown on Will Shipley. So if not Shipley, who at that spot that was still on the board?
Yeah. So if you followed my run back coverage, I was pounding the table for either Tyrone Tracy or Ray Davis. I think they would have been great compliments. And when they took Shipley, I had said that and I said he's in a way he's a combination of both of them. He takes like the vision that Ray Davis has, like they both have really good vision, and he takes the versatility, the passing down acumen, the receiving skills of Tyrone Tracy, because Tyrone Tracy was a former receiver this past season, converted to running back. I just don't see him being a better player than either of them. Tyrone Tracy, especially, I think Tyrone Tracy late round pick, but he can be a really good running back in this league. With just more experience. You get him more experience, he's going to get better and better. And then Ray Davis is just a good back. Like, not like he's not going to be a superstar or anything, but like he's reliable. He's a good overall athlete. He has great vision. He's tough to bring down. So those were the two on day 3 where I was like, okay, the Eagles, if they're looking for a running back, which they obviously were, those are the two that stood out to me as targets. And I think they went shortly after we took Shipley. So, Ray Davis did. Tyrone Tracy went a few more rounds later to the Giants, which I hate saying it, that's a great pick. I think, I know Singletary's there now, I believe, but the Giants getting Tyrone Tracy was a great pick for them. So yeah, I don't hate the pick because it does make sense. And again, he is going to provide competition for Kenny Gainwell. There were others on the board. That's all I'm saying.
Martian, you have a poster with knowing damn well you ain't see highlights of Wilt Chamberlain in color. So Don asks us about UDFAs. And speaking of UDFAs, listen, people thought that he wasn't going to touch the Bulldog pool. He wasn't going to do that this year. He got burnt from that kitchen last year. Keaton Milton, UDFA running back. So once again, I'm going to go to Chuck's.
Kendall Milton.
Is it Kendall or Keaton?
Kendall. Milton.
I got the K right. Okay, leave me alone.
No, you're fine.
So Kendall Milton what is his chances of making the actual roster?
I don't. It's tough. I don't see it. I've only dabbled into him because I ran out of time pre-draft, and I was trying to fit in time before miss all my vacation prepping and everything to try to finish watching all of them I have on him. Mm-hmm. But I couldn't. But I just, based on what I've seen, he's a power runner. He's got some talent, but let me put it this way. I hate going back to the well here.
Mm-hmm.
If they picked up Trey Sermon off waivers and they let him go last season, I don't see them hanging on to Kendall Milton. No, maybe a practice squad, but talent-wise, right now you still can't convince me that Trey Sermon deserved to be on this roster. But they let him go. So I don't think Kendall Milton is that type of talent. I don't you have Shipley, Gainwell competing for RB2 behind Saquon, right? So those are your 3 backs. You have a fourth roster spot for a running back because they always do 4. So you got Tyrion Davis-Price and you got Kendall Milton. Yeah. So
Boston Scott's out there somewhere just waiting.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he does come back. Who knows? I don't know. He's got a chance because if it's between him and if it's between Milton and Tyrion Davis-Price, he's got a shot. But at the same time, would I put it past them if they picked up a free agent? I wouldn't put it past them. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe when I get back from vacation in a few weeks and I'm able to dive more into Milton, maybe I'll see stuff that I like more. But as of right now, he's a powerful runner. And SJM touched on it. He said Milton is a nice scoop, purely physical downhill runner, no receiving skill. So he's a one trick pony. And I know our fan base loves their power runners.
They're so important.
Yeah, they love them. And I know SJM.
We somehow have back-to-back 1,000-yard running backs without a power runner, but they're very important.
Yeah, Braylon Allen, he was a power runner that he wanted. So I mean, I get it, but I don't know. It's hard to see Kendall Milton having that big of an impact. Maybe he does make practice squad though.
Well, since before we get out of here, I just want to summarize the whole draft as a whole. Felt some needs, got younger, got cheaper, hopefully better talent, and transitional. Some Mayo magic in there too. Can't go without that. But at the same time, all the check boxes haven't been checked off. We won't know that no matter what they would have done in those last 3 days.
Still moves to be made.
We get on the field in September, right? So at this point, you just want everyone to stay healthy, be smart, show up in shape, Mekhi Becton, because that's $5.5 million, up to $5.5 million. But it's a lot of resources. Outside of that, it's kind of just a wait and see if they make another move or not. You know, secondary is pretty loaded. Offense is loaded. They re-up 3 years, $96 million with AJ Brown, and let's kind of see. But I mean, for everyone here, Chucks, enjoy your vacation. Safe travels. For myself and PY, we hope to be here next Monday, back with Les, having Brinks as well, and maybe another little surprise. We'll see. But for all the boys here, Eagles Talk on A2D Radio on Monday night, we out of here. Peace.